How are we doing today? First of all, ignore the fact that the covers are not on the lights. We're renovating this bathroom. Anyways, I just wanted to say hello and let you know that I am going to be doing a Halloween week video series. I don't know what to call it. Anyways, I'm calling it Hallow-Week. So it's gonna be in a little bit different of a format than I typically do. I typically film and have myself in the video, but I'm not gonna be doing that. It is going to be kind of a, more of a documentary-esque kind of vibe. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. Anyways, I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you like the new format. Let me know what you think, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Cassie Jo Stoddart was born on December 21st, 1989 in Pocatello, Idaho, which was located in Bannock County. Cassie was born to her mother, Ann, and she had a family who loved her very much. Cassie had a younger brother and an older sister. Cassie and her siblings lived with her grandparents, although they still remained very close with their mother. Cassie was described as the artistic type who loved music and drawing. Cassie had lots of friends and was described as someone who would befriend any and everyone. In September of 2006, Cassie was 16 years old and a junior at Pocatello High School. Pocatello High School is an older high school that is located downtown in the heart of Pocatello, often referred to as Old Town Pocatello. The area is described by locals as somewhere ridden with a lot of paranormal activity, and the locals are pretty outward with their experiences there. The town of Pocatello itself offers a haunted tour or a ghost tour that you can go on, and the high school itself has been known for its fair share of paranormal activity. In December of 2014, the school's security footage captured what some call a ghost. Seen is a dark, shadowy figure moving from a bench to the bathroom. A reboot of A&E's Ghost Hunters went to the school in 2019 to investigate. I bring this up to say a lot of people say that the school itself, the halls, are haunted and that there's a lot of evil that lives within the school. Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if paranormal things are true, but I can say certainly that evil did live in a couple members of the students that attended that high school. Cassie was beautiful with her dark hair and her dark eyes, and she had a boyfriend of 5 months in September of 2006. His name was Matt Beckham. He was also a junior at Pocatello High School and was 16 years old. Cassie was responsible and reliable, and she babysat during the summer, but when her aunt and uncle were going out of town during the school year, they asked her if she would house sit and pet sit for them, and of course she agreed. Allison and Frank Contreras had 3 cats, 2 dogs, and some kids, and so she would babysit for them, but it was time for them to go out of town, and so Cassie, being the responsible young lady that she was, agreed to, for the first time, house sit by herself for them. She didn't live far from them, just a few miles up the road, so she felt pretty comfortable staying there, and she wanted to contribute to her car fund. On Friday, September 22nd, 2006, Cassie's mom drove her to their home at Whispering Cliffs Drive in northeast Bannock County. The area was rural and there were no houses next to the home owned by the Contreras family. Cassie, being a normal young teenage girl, thought, well, you know what, since I'm going to be all alone in the middle of nowhere, maybe I can, invite my boyfriend over to hang out. And so she asked her aunt for permission, and her aunt knew that she was reliable and that she wouldn't, abuse alcohol or drugs or do anything to get herself into trouble. And so, of course, her aunt agreed. And so Cassie invited Matt over to hang out with her that night. Matt also invited Tori Adamczyk and Brian Draper to hang out with them. They were mutual friends of both Matt and Cassie's, and he invited them to come and hang out. They were 16 as well and attended Pocatello High School. Although Cassie was friends with Brian and Tori, she was a little upset with Matt because she had only asked her aunt for permission for, Matt to come over and not anyone else. So she was a little upset with him, but she decided what the heck. Once they arrived, Cassie and the three young men went and had a house tour. She showed them the upstairs, the downstairs, the basement, everything. And then they made their way into the living room where they sat around, relaxed, and watched Kill Bill Volume 2. Before the movie was over, Tori and Brian decided that they wanted to go watch a movie in the theater, so they told their other two friends, Cassie and Matt, goodbye, and they left. However, Matt did stay behind with Cassie to continue the movie and to hang out. About 15 or 20 minutes after the two men left, Cassie and Matt were hanging out in the living room finishing up that movie, and the power went off. And of course, that scared Cassie. And along with that, even though the power, shortly did come back on, the Contreras family's two dogs were standing at the doorway looking down into the basement, and they were growling and kind of barking. And so this, of course, as it would any of us, kind of scared Cassie. And so she asked Matt if he would call his mom to see if he could stay the night with her there. The power continued flickering on and off, but they opted not to go downstairs and check the breakers or the circuit or anything. They decided to remain there, and Matt called his mom to ask if he could spend the night. But of course, being that they were only 16, Matt's mom said, no, you can't spend the night here. However, if, Cassie wants to come and spend the night with us, she's more than welcome to do that, and I'll bring her back here in the morning. Since Cassie had promised her aunt and uncle that she would stay at the house and stay with the pets, she, thanked Matt and his mom, but said, she was going to stay there. So around 10:30, 11 that night, Matt's mom came to pick him up, and he asked her one last time, are you sure I can't stay here with Cassie? And his mom was like, no, but again, she can come with us. I'll bring her back in the morning. And she declined because of the pets and the promise that she made to her aunt and uncle. So Cassie went back inside, and on the way home, Matt called Tori and Brian to see if they wanted to continue hanging out, to see if maybe they wanted to come and spend the night. When he called Tori's phone, Tori was kind of whispering and he couldn't really hear him, and he remembered, oh yeah, they're at the movie theater. I'm sure they're finishing up their movie. And so he just hung up the phone, went home, and essentially just stayed in for the night. So Cassie goes back into the home, and she's chilling on the couch, watching TV, I'm sure, laying around, relaxing, and the power begins to flicker on and off and on and off. And Cassie just continues to stay in the living room, and eventually she falls asleep. The next day, on September 22nd, Matt is trying to get a hold of Cassie, and he's unable to. And so he and Tori are hanging out, and he's telling Tori, I haven't heard from her, I'm concerned. And Tori assures him that she's okay. Matt asked Tori if he would drive him over to the Contreras home because he did not have a vehicle, but Tori, assured him, listen, dude, Matt, Cassie's okay, don't worry about it, everything's fine. 2 days later, on September 24th, 2006, Cassie's aunt and uncle and cousins arrived back at home around 1:55 p.m. Cassie's 13-year-old cousin opens the already unlocked door to the home, walks into the living room, and on the floor is Cassie's body covered in blood. Of course, Cassie's cousin immediately screams, alerts the aunt and uncle, who run in. They immediately call 911. They call Cassie's mom, and eventually, EMS arrives on scene as well as police. Upon viewing Cassie's body, the police and EMS made a determination that they believe that Cassie had been deceased for several days. It was said that Cassie was covered in blood, deep lacerations, and stab wounds. The state did pay for the aunt and uncle and cousins and their pets and everyone to stay in a temporary housing, something like a hotel, for a couple of weeks while the investigation was ongoing. An autopsy would later report that Cassie Jo was stabbed 29 to 30 times, with 9 to 12 of them being fatal. Forensic pathologist Dr. Charles Garrison would later testify that the majority of the fatal wounds were to the right ventricle of Cassie Jo's heart. Investigators knew that this was not a robbery, as the door was unlocked, there was no forced entry, and no items, including their, expensive items, were taken. Nothing in the house was disturbed. The only thing out of place was Cassie Jo. Of course, investigators immediately opened up a full investigation, starting with the last person that saw Cassie Jo, and that was her boyfriend, Matt Beckham. When interviewing Matt, police stated that he wasn't as emotional as they expected him to be, but he was incredibly forthcoming with information, offering up every detail of that night, and led them to Brian and Tori as well, who were two of the last people to see Cassie alive. And as a formality, the police brought Tori in that same day and interviewed him. Tori did admit to being at the home, but said that he and Brian Draper left and went to the local movie theater to watch a movie. The detective asked Tori to relay all of the information from that night, which he did do. And when they asked him what movie he went to see, he answered, there is conflicting information. Some things say he was able to provide a ticket stub. Others say that he said he would provide a ticket stub, but there was never a ticket stub. However, he did know what movie he went to see. Investigators began to ask him questions about the movie that he had gone to see, like the synopsis, what characters were in it, what actors were in it, what happened, anything that you would know if you saw the movie. And it was stated that he just kind of froze. To not cause suspicion that they maybe thought that he could have been involved, they, of course, did not want him to get an attorney or stop answering questions or leave, since it was a voluntary interview. They decided to just kind of move past that question and continue on with the interview. The next day, the police brought Brian Draper in to interview him. They asked him some of the same questions, walk us through the night, which he did. He also explained that he had gone to the movies, potentially had a ticket stub. And again, when they asked him, who were the actors that played in this, who were some of the characters, what was the plot, give us a synopsis, he froze up. And so the same thing, to avoid attorneys, to avoid him walking out, they brushed past that question and moved on to other questions. They also decided to interview Brian and Tori and Cassie and Matt's peers at Pocatello High School and, get their input on all four of the people that were, involved in this horrific act. They said that Brian and Tori were obsessed with horror films, specifically the movie Scream. They would always be seen walking around with a Sony camcorder around the school, around the town. They were always obsessed with making a horror film. It was also said that Tori would talk about how he had a set of knives in his room, and also the two boys would talk about how they could get away with murder if they wanted to by doing it the same way it's done in a horror film. Lastly, their peers, including Matt, stated that they believed that Tori had maybe like a secret crush on Cassie. Between the circumstantial evidence and the fact that pretty much everyone said that it was plausible that Tori and Brian could have done this, Tori and Brian were charged 5 days after the murder on September 27th of 2006. They were charged with first-degree murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. Now, instantly, the two men turned on one another. They both, said that they thought it was going to be a prank, and the other one was the one who actually committed the crime. They just immediately turned on one another, which is often the case in these types of situations, especially with juveniles or those young adults. This is pretty common. So who are these two boys, and what possessed them, motivated them to commit this crime to begin with, but especially to commit it on someone who was their friend? Brian Draper was born on March 21st, 1990, to parents Pam and Carrie Draper. Brian lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, during his childhood, but when his family moved to Pocatello, Brian started to attend high school there, and that's where he met Tori. Tori Michael Adamczyk was born on June 14th, 1990, to parents Shannon and Sean Adamczyk. Tori grew up in Pocatello. Brian was super outgoing, even though Tori was not. However, when the boys met, they became fast friends as they bonded over their love of movies, specifically horror movies, and they even started making their own films. It's alleged that Brian had a crush on Cassie, but she was not interested as she was dating Matt. Brian remained friends with her, but always felt like he was an outcast because he had a really hard time fitting in. However, as we talked about, it was also alleged by peers and Matt that Tori also seemed interested in Cassie as well. Brian was a fan or had an obsession with Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the two shooters in the Columbine school massacre. He said they represented the outcasts and people who no one noticed, and that he wanted to, quote, be great like them. Brian had a website that, quote, memorialized 3 of the 13 victims in the shooting by telling how they died, and at the end it said, quote, more victims to come. So Brian and Tori, they were best friends, and what started out as, and I hate to say the word innocent, but innocent bonding over things like Scream, the movie, and horror films slowly became to get darker and darker and more evil, like bonding over how they idolized and were fans of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris from the Columbine shootings, as well as saying, I think I might want to kill someone one day, and the other probably saying like, yeah, me too. And then it just slowly became just evil. They documented how they wanted to make horror films, but in real life horror films, so reality versions of horror films. They both stated that they wanted to get famous like the Columbine shooters, but wanted to, kill their victims in the style, I hate using it like that, but in the way that Ghostface or whatever the villain in the Scream movies were in that franchise, the way that they did that to their victims. So essentially they wanted to, murder their victims while no one was home except for the victim themselves. According to unreleased tapes from the police, it is said that the two men described having a kill list and wrote out a manifesto where they described their attempt at killing other victims, but they were never successful, thankfully. It was said that they would hear, through people talking at school, that there would be people that would be home alone, and they would go there in an attempt to commit a crime on that person. But once they arrived, they would see that maybe their friends stayed the night, or they weren't really going to be home alone, and they just said that, and they ultimately decided to leave. It was also stated that they wrote manifestos, manuscript, had a kill list, and also made written out plans of how they were going to commit their crimes. So what happened the night of Cassie Jo's murder? Before we talk about that, let's talk about the days leading up to that night. In some released but some unreleased video footage from the police, it's stated that they planned in advance for this murder to take place. Unfortunately, according to the boys' own words in a video recorded, quote, it had to be Cassie. The morning of the murder, video footage shows Brian walking up to Cassie and saying, hey, look, it's Cassie.
I'm getting you on tape, okay? Say hi, please. Hi. Okay, see ya. Wait, have you seen Tori? He's supposed to meet me here at 7:30, and it's 8:19. He's an hour late. You don't even care, do you? Okay. See ya.
Brian and Tori then skip their 4th period class to plan the night and their, quote, death list.
September 22nd, 2006. We're skipping our 4th hour. We're writing our plan right now. Our death list. I'm telling Cassie's family, but she had number 1. We have to stick with the plan. And she's perfect, so she's gonna die.
Skip ahead to that night. Cassie's mom, as we know, drops her off at the house at 5:30. Matt arrives at 6 and invites Tori and Brian over to the home. Now, this was proven to be just kind of a coincidence, if you will, just a really terrible coincidence that Matt invited them over. That was never a part of their plan, and Matt was proven to never in any way be involved in this. So it just happened that he invited them over, and so they happily agreed so they could, scope things out and kind of get an idea of what they were going to do. They spend about 2 hours there and watch the majority of the movie before telling them that they were leaving to go to the movie theater. When they left, they exited out of the basement, leaving the door unlocked. They returned to their car, which was parked up the street, where they gathered their items, black clothing, gloves, masks, and they also got into the car and made a video at 9:50. Viewer discretion is especially advised.
We're here in his car. The time is 9:50, September 22nd, 2006. Unfortunately, we have the grueling task of killing our 2 friends, and they are right in that house just down the street.
We just talked to them. We were there for an hour. But
We checked out the whole house. We know there's lots of doors. There's lots of places to hide. I unlocked the back doors, so it's all locked. Now we just gotta wait, and yeah, we're really nervous right now, but we're ready.
we're listening to the greatest rock band
We've
ever,
waited for this for a long time.
Pink Floyd, before we commit the ultimate crime of murder.
We waited for this for a long time.
A long time.
We'll stay tuned.
Brian was armed with a dagger-style knife, and Tori had a hunting-type knife. Around this time, they enter back in, wearing their costumes, and they enter in the basement that they had left unlocked, and they flip the breaker, causing Matt and Cassie upstairs to think that the power had gone off. The family dogs heard noises in the basement because now we know it was the 2 men, so of course they were growling and barking down towards the basement. And as we know, Cassie asked Matt to stay. He called his mom. She said no, offered for Cassie to go, but she wanted to stay with the animals in the house like she had promised her aunt and uncle, and so she unfortunately stays. Matt leaves, and he calls Tori on the phone, and of course he sounds muffled and like, he's whispering, and Matt chalks it up to, oh yeah, he, is in the movie theater, when in reality, he is already in Cassie's basement waiting to attack her. The 2 men downstairs flipped the power off completely and began making loud noises, banging things, making their way up the stairs and slamming doors and closets, trying to lure Cassie out, trying to lure her downstairs. Thankfully, in that moment, she had fallen asleep, and although unfortunately we know that she ultimately loses her life, I just hope in that moment she didn't feel terror for a long period of time. So they walked in wearing their costumes, their masks, and they startled her awake. Of course, because they were in disguise, she didn't know who they were. And she asked them, who are you? To which, it's never documented if they had a response or what the response would have been or was. But it is documented that she told them, if you try to hurt me, I will fight back. And I think that speaks volumes to the kind of person that Cassie Jo was. And Tori and Brian, both of them being the manipulative, crazy, sick, psychotic, oh my God, I have so many words that I cannot use, individuals that they were. Cowardly, Tori jumps forward and just immediately stabs Cassie in the neck, throat area. It caused her to immediately fall down to the ground, not even giving her an opportunity to put up a fight. Tori immediately turned to Brian and says, quote, "We have to finish killing her." And as we know, they unfortunately stabbed Cassie 29 to 30 times, with 9 to 12 of those stabs being fatal. Brian and Tori leave and get in the car and immediately pull out their camera and begin filming their reaction.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a joke.
I'm shaking.
I her in the throat and I saw her body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie. That felt like it wasn't real. I mean, it went by so fast.
Shut up, we gotta get our act straight.
It's okay. Okay, let's buy movie tickets now.
Okay.
Come on, goodbye.
No.
Goodbye.
The two men drive to Tori's house where it is alleged that they potentially stopped and bought movie tickets. Again, I couldn't find anything confirming that to be 100% true. I saw differing reports, but it is alleged that they stopped to buy movie tickets on their way home to Tori's house. Once they arrived at Tori's house, they went to the garage and grabbed a plastic blue bag along with rubbing alcohol. In the blue bag, they put the gloves, the masks, the weapons, they put everything in there, including the tapes that they had made. They then go to the local store and buy matches. They drove to a canyon in Pocatello called Black Rock Canyon to dispose of everything since it was secluded and up a hill. They partially burned the bag and buried the remains, including the tapes that they made, but obviously not burning them completely since they were recovered. They then go back to Tori's house and watch a movie. So 3 days after the arrest, in an attempt to make a plea deal or get less jail time, Brian led the police to the canyon where they, destroyed partially all of the things that were involved in this crime. The police were able to recover those items. The police found the partially burned and buried bag that included 2 dagger-style knives with sheaths, a silver and black handled knife with a smooth black blade, a folding knife, a red and white mask, latex gloves, and a litany of damning videotapes showing that both of the men were equally involved and tried to murder others in the past, along with premeditating the entire thing and admitting to kill her in their post-murder reactionary video. The 2 boys, although only 17 at that time, were tried as adults and had their trials separately. On April 17th, 2007, Brian Draper was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. On May 31st, 2007, Tori Adamczyk's trial began, and on June 8th, he was convicted of the same 2 charges, which were first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. At the sentencing hearing for both boys, the courtroom was packed full of Cassie's supporters, including her family and friends, and also family and friends of the 2 boys involved. Residing was Judge Peter McDermott, who said he was convinced the 2 boys were so disturbed that they'd kill again if given the chance of being free. The prosecutor who represented Cassie and her family said, quote, "The horror and pain she must have felt when the blades of those knives entered her body, and she finally realized that she was being murdered by her friends, is unimaginable." He also recommended life in prison without the possibility of parole. Both Tori and Brian gave tear-filled apologies for their crimes. Tori said, quote, "I feel terrible for Cassie's family and my family and friends, and especially for Cassie. What happened to her was monstrous." Brian stated, quote, "All I ask is you give me the punishment I deserve for my part in this crime. That is the only way I will be able to find some sort of closure, by getting what I deserve." Brian also said, quote, "She was scared and alone and needed someone to protect her from harm, and I did not do that. Instead, I didn't do a thing to help her." Brian's attorney asked the judge for him to have leniency on Brian since he did lead the police to the evidence, all of the evidence regarding the crime. They stated, quote, "I believe he went to the police to do the right thing. When you do the right thing with everything to lose and nothing to gain, That is courage. Tori's attorney, Aaron Thompson, said, quote, "I truly am sorry that our community, our world, lost Cassie Stoddart. I just don't want to lose another teenager." Prosecutor Heidemann, who I think is probably my favorite person involved in any of the court cases that I have covered or talked about, he reminded the judge, quote, "They had no pity on Cassie Jo and they deserve no pity. They showed no mercy on September 22nd, 2006, and they deserve none." Judge McDermott said that he believed that the two boys methodically planned out the murder of their friend and that they did it together equally. He also said, quote, "The best prediction of future behavior is past behavior." Ultimately, he did not offer Brian a lesser sentence, even though he did lead the police to the evidence. He said, quote, "You've ruined your lives. You've taken Cassie's life from her family. You will each serve a life sentence fixed without the possibility of parole." Both boys received life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 30 years to life for the conspiracy behind the murder. Both boys would eventually appeal their sentences, however, lose those appeals. Cassie Jo's family tried to sue Pocatello High School for not seeing the boys were a threat due to talking about killing people and making videos in the school planning a murder, but unfortunately they did lose that case. In the aftermath, Brian ultimately has taken responsibility. He had a somewhat recent interview that I will go ahead and play a portion of that for you.
I met Tori Adamczyk in sophomore year. He started talking about the movie Scream, how it'd be cool to actually do a Scream type crime. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, have you ever, thought about that? Not really. I mean, I've thought about other things like, Columbine. And he really wasn't into that. And I was like, well, I could either be alone or I could join his plan and be with him and not be alone. I want to have a chance at life. I understand that, Cassie can't, and I never ignore that, She's dead, and not anything is gonna change that. I did something terrible, and, and there has to be consequences for that. Everything we do in life, there's always consequences.
I don't know, I have a lot of ambitions, and I mean, if I were to get out, I know exactly what I would do with my life, but being in here, that's all I have is just these, it feels like all I have is just to sit here and rot, and there's no redeeming qualities. There's nothing I can do really to alleviate any, I don't know, it's like just watching yourself decompose. It's just horrible.
He's been in prison 6 years, and he's still on his first day. He hasn't progressed at all. And in the end, it's gonna hurt him in the end. Either psychologically, if he has a conscience, or in courts, they don't want to hear that you're completely innocent. He's not innocent. He's not. I'm not innocent. I'm guilty, and he's guilty, and that's where we all should start at. I just wish I could go back in time.
Tori, however, still does not take responsibility, saying, quote, "I was innocent because I was only 16. Tori's parents also wrote a book profiting off of Cassie Jo's murder committed by their son. They also believe that their sweet little Tori is innocent because he was 16 at the time of the crime.
I don't know, I think they're just worried about me.
Just a really good kid.
Tori's a good kid, and Tori's just a kind person, and we're still a family. He's still every bit as much a part of our family as before.
I remember the first article I read about my case. Geez, I mean, they made me sound like this brutal, cold, psychopathic killer.
We were talking about Brian. They were making you just like Brian.
They put us like as the same person.
They lumped them together.
I only hung out with him for 6 weeks before this happened. I think it's crazy how the last week of me being on the street, being free, really has affected the rest of my life. If you were to watch that video and nothing had happened, it would literally be a joke.
In 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional for a minor to receive a life sentence without possibility of parole, no matter what crime that they committed. Tori has tried to appeal his sentence 3 times due to this ruling, and he has lost all 3 times. Tragically, as you know, anytime someone commits a crime, it is more than just the victim that is involved. You have, the family of the victim. And unfortunately for Cassie's family, the tragedy did not just end when the case was closed and the 2 men were sentenced. In the aftermath of this, Cassie's aunt lost her job and fell into an incredibly deep depression. Cassie's little cousin, the one that found her, she attempted to take her own life and just never was the same after this. Cassie's aunt also states that that house used to be their dream home, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. Her aunt and uncle never returned home. The state had provided them with temporary housing while the investigation was ongoing, but they decided to sell after the case was closed. They put the house up for sale in 2006, and it didn't sell until 2015, even though they were only asking for what they owed on the house. It was bought in 2015, but however, it is currently back on the market, or recently was back on the market. As of 2023, both Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk are still residing in prison. They are located at the Idaho State Correctional Institution. That is all for this video. I hope that this is something that you found interesting and educational. Thank you for watching this video. Again, if you would like to, you can follow me on Instagram, you can follow me on TikTok. Please remember to subscribe, like, share, comment, whatever. I always am interested in hearing your thoughts on these cases. If you have a case that you would like for me to cover, or a case you would like for me to discuss, you can always reach out to me at my on my Instagram. You can reach out to me in the comments below. I will, find a way to get in contact with you. I always like to hear from you. So anyways, thank you for watching. As always, have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.